I wrote this on July 24th, so excuse me if I said anything that's already been confirmed. Also, I didn't really play New Game Plus, so some of this might already be in the game, who knows. I've been playing Grounded since July 25th, 2022, and I have nearly 135 hours on the game. It's only that low because my computer was crappy in 2022 and 2023, and I'm afraid of bugs. Anyways, since Grounded 2 is right around the corner, I've written down a few things I would like to see added to the game. The video is split into sections, covering tools, bugs, biomes, and more. So let's get into the first section, which is tools and mobility. Starting with weapons, I would like to see a water pump you can use in pools, similar to the canteen. You can fill it up with murky water, but you can shoot it at bugs, potentially stunning them or poisoning them, but doing minor damage as well. It can also be full-sized and not shrunk, maybe using a tier 3 hammer at the pump end to shoot it at something to unlock an area. Another category I'd like to see expanded is mobility. We have the dandelion and aphid slippers, but that's mostly stuff you see in early game. I'd like to see better aphid slippers since the map is 3 times as large, and since they're adding a chilling area, they could add some sort of ice shoes that would start slow but exponentially speed up as if you're skating around. I could also see the developers adding something like grasshopper boots. It would work like aphid slippers just vertically, so whenever you wore them, they'd add more bounce to your jump. Gliders and vertical movement. I think upgrading the glider would be interesting since they aren't going to be adding any ziplines on release. Since the dandelion is a tier 1 glider, it would be nice to see them add something like paper for tier 2 or a feather or cloth for tier 3. With how big the map is and how high you have to climb, I'd like a better glider for better in-air mobility. Just like how the glider brings you down, it would be nice to have an item that brings you up as well. With how it's set in the park, I could definitely see more trash that the kids could use. Maybe they could use something like Coke and Mentos to propel themselves similar to a jetpack, or those throwable fireworks that can give you a boost upwards. Progression and tiers. With the map being 3 times the size of the original, I'm expecting a much higher tier than tier 3. I would love to see a tier 4 tool you could craft when you exit the beginner area. I'm wanting tier 6 tools, but they'll most likely add up to only tier 5 if they do decide to add stuff past tier 3. Since I'd like to see more tiers expanded upon, I want more feather tiers. The crow feather is a tier 2, but it would be interesting to see tier 1 and tier 3 feathers added. Maybe something like a blue jay or a finch hanging around in the beginner area dropping tier 1 feathers, a crow in the middle area dropping tier 2 feathers, and something like an eagle in the more tough areas dropping tier 3 feathers. Environment, biomes, and structures. I would like to see some returning biomes from the first game, even if some can't be recreated. The haze, although being super annoying, was pretty major to Grounded 1. I could see them using the same pollen mechanic from the bees and making something like a pollen-infested area around a tree. Still having you use the gas mask, but it wouldn't really hurt you if you didn't have one on. It would just slow you down and maybe blur your vision. One aspect of the first game that I loved was the hedge. Having to parkour high up with the threat of falling into the spiders below. I believe the greenhouse spotted in the park will hold a similar purpose, having you parkour over trellises and stuff like cucumber vines with fire ants, snails, and caterpillars below you. Since it looks like there is another pond area, there could be a mud area around it. It would be filled with clay but also slow down your walking speed if you stepped on the mud. You'd have to repeatedly jump to not sink down, so if you wear something like flippers to prevent it, you'd already have them on if you were going to the pond, so it's perfect in my eyes. Now, onto the structures. I can't say I have as deep of a knowledge on grounded buildings and structures since I didn't really build at all when I played, but if this isn't already in the game, I'd like to see a compost bin, a structure that works like the freezer but instead of slowing down the decomposition of food, it would speed it up. Another idea I had was maybe on a picnic table or in the trash, there could be some spilled paint. You could collect the paint and then you could paint your walls, floors, and ceilings all kinds of colors. I saw the spilled red paint bucket in Grounded 1 and was surprised they didn't think to add a mechanic like this. It would give builders a lot more choices to choose from. Resources and food. With it being set in a park with lots of trash, I would like to see more foods and flavors. They could add a bitter or gross buff, though I think we're good with the 5 we have now, but who knows. One gripe I had with Grounded 1 was when I first discovered salt crystals, my mind immediately went to, I need to find a bag of chips. Since chips typically have salt, but the salt was found in antlion dens, which is weird. Since there probably won't be antlions, but there will be tons of trash, I would like to see them add chips that would drop salt crystals when destroyed. Another thing I could see happen in the Grounded universe is Puncho expanding their brand, going from juice boxes to juice bottles. I think seeing juice bottles and juice boxes scattered around the map would be nice. The juice bottles could have a puddle of juice that you could take 7 sips of before it depletes. There could also be bugs like spiders, gnats, and ants in the juice bottles to deter most players from basing inside. With how many trees seem to be in the park, I could see one being something like a crab apple or peach tree. I would love to see an easy, reliable way to get apple bits, like how acorns appear around the tree in the first game. I also saw a red berry in the trailer, so there definitely is more wiggle room for new berries and fruits. Buggies and mounts. Now on to the most hyped aspect of the game, the bugs. Since the buggies are so hyped up, I'll start with them and the ideas I have for them. It's pretty obvious we'll get a bee buggy. It's a flying bug, so it'll be incredibly useful to get around with. It will probably also have to be late game or nerfed, since it seems to be very overpowered, so maybe a stamina bar will be added for how long they can fly. I've seen people suggest ladybugs for a tank buggy, but that seems too obvious, plus they aren't all neutral since there is ladybirds. That brings up the question, which bug is tanky and doesn't have an angry variant? It's the roly-poly. There's such a cooler option than ladybugs. I'd take a roly-poly buggy over a ladybug buggy any day. This next one is going to be debatable. Regardless, I would like to see a mouse buggy added. It doesn't fit with the whole bug theme, but I think being able to tame something so big as a field mouse would be incredibly interesting. I think the mouse would work similar to the koi in the koi pond. You can't kill it, but it can kill you. I think having a creature being meant for buggies and being so large would be so cool. Plus, a field mouse seems like it would be the most powerful buggy outside of the spiders. Bugs. So if you don't like looking at bugs, just put this on in the background. Now onto my real bug list. I've already talked about the mice, so we can skip those. Between the release of Grounded 1 and 2, I've gotten very immersed in bottle terrariums. One major part of the terrarium's ecosystem is a bug called a springtail. They're a perfect peaceful bug that would stay around moist areas like mud, underleaf litter, rotten food, and dirt tunnels. I could see them being a bug that would bridge the tier gap between pupa and grub, or potentially being a tier 4 if they do add those. Grasshoppers, like I suggested with the grasshopper boots, they'd actually have to add the bug to add the armor. I could see these guys being similar to the mantis we saw in the trailer, maybe just lower level. Daddy long legs. With all the talk about spiders, I'm surprised these guys aren't brought up more. It would be an interesting fight because I could see the kids having to use an axe to chop down the spider's legs since it's too tall to actually hit it. I don't know if this mechanic is good, but I could definitely see some cool ideas out of this one. Black crazy ants. Black crazy ants are another invasive species of ants. Just like the fire ants, it would be interesting to have a plot line about you choosing a side to support, the fire ants or the black crazy ants, and you could choose which one would take over the higher parts of the park. In the first Grounded, they had tadpoles in the koi pond. It would be interesting to see them grown up and to have frogs in the second game. They could patrol the little pond or lake area on the surface. Similar to the koi fish, you couldn't kill them, but you would have to avoid them or be killed in one hit. I could see fleas being added to the game. They had the ticks in the first game, so why wouldn't they add their counterpart? Plus, it's a park. I wouldn't be surprised if there was the occasional flea hotspot. I didn't write this down, but here's an honorable mention. Carpenter ants, they are huge, and with the trees, I could see an ant colony inside of one being crazy. Bosses. Since it seems they're experimenting with some kind of radiation in the park, I could definitely see a berry getting mutated, making some sort of berry boss in the same vein of the mant. I don't have much to say about this boss, but they definitely have enough room to add the scrapped lizard boss from the first game. Isopods come in all shapes and sizes, so I could definitely see a giant isopod as a boss. Isopods aren't strictly decomposers and will eat any decomposing matter. If they're hungry enough, they'll eat other bugs and even some of their own species. I wouldn't be surprised to see them add a massive tanky isopod boss. So that's all my ideas for Grounded 2. I'm pretty sure 90% of them won't even show up in the game, but it's still fun to theorize and wish. See ya!